absolutely a delight and a pleasure to now introduce my friend and colleague, Carolyn Everson. She is a woman who has helped to create the vital role that advertising plays on Facebook and therefore across all social media. Maybe that's because she's already honed her skills on the front lines of many of the top companies in our industry, including MTV and Microsoft, among others. And as Facebook's global advertising chief, Carolyn is known as the other First Lady. There are two at Facebook, along with Sheryl Sandberg, of course, who personally recruited her. With digital consumption on the rise and billions of people across the globe using mobile devices to access the internet, the consumer's attention is obviously shifting, and we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that today. And the advertising industry simply must do more to adapt to it. And as well, understand and anticipate that. So Carolyn, as Vice President of Global Marketing Solutions at Facebook, is going to speak to us today on the importance of personalized marketing in the new mobile era and digital era. Carolyn leads Facebook's relationships with its top marketers and agencies around the world. She oversees a team of regional leaders along with teams focused on global partnerships, global agencies, and Facebook's Creative Shop. Whether she is stretching the boundaries of advertising in new and surprising ways, breaking boundaries for women in the industry, or proudly looking after her own family, including Taylor and Kennedy, her adorable twins, she even helps, obviously, oversee this online enterprise at Facebook. She's blazing new trails for all of us, and we are lucky and thrilled to have her here today. So please help me welcome Carolyn Everson.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Wendy, for that lovely introduction. Wendy has been an amazing friend and colleague for many, many years, and when she asked me to do this along with Ozzy and Rich, it was a true honor to accept this invitation, and I'm really thrilled to be here today. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with a couple of stories which I think bring to life what's happening in marketing today and, frankly, the amazing opportunity and responsibility that we have as an industry. I'm then going to take you through 3 trends which I think are particularly important and then try to give you some insight as to what we're doing at Facebook to respond to these trends. This is a favela in São Paulo, Brazil. I'm honored today to have several of my teams here with me from Latin America. And this is a gentleman by the name of Raimundo. Raimundo has been homeless for 35 years. But Raimundo was somebody that actually had a lot deeper insight and interest. Every day he wrote poetry. And one day a woman by the name of Shyla met him on the streets and took an interest in his poetry and decided to take matters in her own hands and create a Facebook page. Neither one of them could ever predict what would happen next. 23,000 fans later, posting beautiful poems, Raimundo's brother discovered him after him being missing for many, many years. The two are reunited, they're back living together, and Raimundo has a new start on life. Now, I could share a story like this with you on a variety of topics. People are rescuing pets around the world. People are getting critical organ donors through Facebook. People are finding access to health care and education and information that they've never had before. And so while some days we might think of Facebook as a way to just stay connected to friends and send messages back and forth, there's a fundamental change in humanity by bringing the world and make it more open and connected. How is it affecting business? This is a favela, not in São Paulo, but in Rio. And here, a gentleman by the name of Andre, 39 years old, had a dream to leave a hot dog little business that he had and start a sandwich business. Now, Andre lived in a favela. He didn't have access to marketing and resources, but he knew about Facebook. So he put his sandwich shop up there. A year later, 70% of his sales are coming from Facebook connections in the local favela. And not only that, he has 9 employees, and he's actually going to start a franchise with his sandwich brand. Facebook for Andre brought a dream, a small business dream that any one of us could have no matter where we are around the world, and brought it to life. This is Jonah. Jonah could have been any of us. He was living in Chicago, he had a successful job, things were on track for him, and he was ready to sort of start his life until one day he got a phone call from his parents that they were in bankruptcy and the entire family business was in jeopardy. Jonah packed up immediately, quit his job, left all of his friends, and said, I got to go back and do something. And he started a business, and it's a nightclub, an entertainment center in Dayton, Ohio. He used all of his investments and the money from investors to get the building up and running and back up to sniff, but he had no money for marketing. He went in the last few $1,000s and said, I'm going to see if I can communicate to the people in Dayton and get them excited about this entertainment center. 2 years later, there's lines every single weekend. Jonah has saved his family business and brought an amazing entertainment complex to Dayton, Ohio. He's been so successful that he's actually written a book for small business owners about how to leverage Facebook and social and build connections with your customers. And so from the smallest individual mom and pop shops in Brazil all the way to the world's largest marketers, marketing is fundamentally changing. And why? We believe there are 3 key trends that are happening. First, connected devices, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, but never before have we had a situation where we have had billions of people with a device in their hands that's more powerful than what NASA had to send the first 2 astronauts to the moon. The second is about people. And I loved when Ozzy introduced this morning and he said, our industry is about people. It's the currency, it's the backbone of the entire industry. We have an opportunity now, because of the personal connections that we're building online, to actually bring people right back to the center of our marketing. And third, measurement. Measurement for a new era. And what do I mean by that? I mean that the measurement that we've used to date to see how effective our marketing has been is not going to work in the future. And we're going to need measurement for a new era, which I'll talk about. So first, let's look at people. There are 7 billion people in the world. 1/3 are connected to the internet. Now, some of you may ask, especially if you're focused in the US business, well, why are others not getting access to the internet? What we did at Facebook is we committed, when Mark started the company 10 years ago, to connect the world. We're now at a little over 1 billion people, so we have a lot more people to connect. But what we found is that 80% of those 7 billion people actually could get connected to the internet today if they wanted to. 80% have access to a 2G or 3G tower, but they don't. They don't for 2 main reasons. One, awareness. They're not even sure what it means to be connected to the internet yet. And 2, cost, which we're working really hard to bring the cost of data down. But we are going to live in a world in the not too distant future where the majority of the people are going to be connected to the internet. Every day, by the time we all go to bed tonight, 1 million more people will have joined. It's a fundamentally different world. And how people are connecting is so much more powerful than ever before. As I said before, the cell phones that you all have in your pocket, you probably all have smartphones, are more powerful than all of NASA's servers that they use to send 2 astronauts to the moon. We all have that in our pockets. There are now 5 billion smartphones out there. There are more phones than there are toothbrushes around the world. It's a fundamentally, I know it's not so good news for Colgate and Crest, but it's okay. There will be eventually more toothbrushes. And people are using them throughout their entire day. 54% of people use it while you're lying in bed. 30% check their phones at the dinner table, which is becoming increasingly rude. 39% of you admit to using it in the bathroom, which is getting a little gross. And 20% of people admit using it while they're having sex. That is true. Not quite sure how that works, but it is with us all of the time. I don't have a slide for that, just to be safe. Although it would have woken you all up, I think. Here's a really good picture description of what happened. In 2005, Pope Benedict, St. Peter's Square, here's everybody there to be in that moment. 2013, that's what that looked like when Pope Francis became the Pope, right? Fundamentally different world that we're living in. And so what does this mean for marketing? It actually means that for the first time in over 60 years, the lines have crossed for consumer consumption. That's a big deal. The last time that happened was when television overtook radio. So now digital has overtaken television. Television's still really important and will continue to be. But something fundamentally has shifted, and this happened just last year in 2013 in the US. So digital was about 5 hours and 14 minutes. Television was 4 hours and 31 minutes. That was at the end in December. Fast forward, the latest numbers heading into May is that digital is now 5 hours and 46 minutes, so it's already gaining about 30 minutes, and TV has gone down 4 hours, 28 minutes. So digital is about 47% of consumers' behavior every day, and the driver has been mobile. So I've stood on stages for many years, and I'm sure many of you have too, and you've said, this is the year of mobile. And you know what? Last year, it was finally the year where mobile became the dominant driver of a change in consumer behavior. In the US, 163 million Americans now have a smartphone. It's about 50% of the population. Others have feature phones. But we are living in a world where those devices are with us, and we're checking them on average 100 times a day. If you ask somebody and say, how many times do you check your phone? They will have difficulty telling you that number because it's becoming so instinctual, it's like blinking your eye. It's a fundamental change for us in how we think about building our brands and communicating with our customers. The second trend is about people. So we live in a world now where everyone expects things to be customized, to be personalized. You don't read a map anymore. You go onto your phone, you go to Google Maps, and you expect that map to know exactly where you are. You put in your coordinates, it helps you get there. When you go on to online shopping, you expect that site to know what you've bought before, what you might like in the future. When you buy groceries online, it keeps track of the products you've bought. When you go to Amazon, they know your preferences, and so on and so forth. It's all about personalization. And so that's what the consumer expects. The consumer expects a very intimate relationship for you to know them and to deliver a really relevant message. And so if that's what the consumer expects, marketing needs to become personal again as well. And let's talk about where this is going. If you think about 80 years ago, prior to mass media, this is what it looked like from a commerce perspective. You had your local relationship with your shopkeeper. Think about how Walmart started when Sam Walton started that first store. That store manager knew their customers. It was very personal. They would know if you liked particular fruit. They would know about your children, what your interests were. And then the rise of mass media happened, and it was brilliant. It built major brands, and it allowed us to scale our marketing business, build factories, ship products, and build major companies. And we had the mass media era. What we believe is that those two things are now coming together, which is that you can have the scale that brands need, but you can also have the personal connection. And when you put those two things together, we believe business is going to become personal again. When you look at measurement, and I talk about this being the third important trend, what's happening now with the average consumer is they are moving seamlessly through devices. Because a consumer doesn't think about, I'm going to go now spend my time on television, and no, I'm going to switch my consumption to desktop, and maybe I'll pull out my tablet, and then later on I'm going to be on my phone, and they don't think that way. They think seamlessly. You heard the stat that Wendy quoted earlier, 100 hours of YouTube content being posted every minute. Consumers have access to more content and more information than their brain has a capacity to absorb. So content creation has gone up exponentially, but our capacity to consume has not changed. And unless something happens with our brain development, it won't. So consumers are tracking through very different devices. Measurement needs to follow. In the latest research that we've seen, over 60% of people use two devices, and they start something on a mobile phone that they might finish on a PC, or vice versa. So they're moving throughout the day seamlessly across many different devices, but our measurement structure is not capturing this in the way it needs to. Largely, our industry is driven by what we call last-click attribution, which is if I got up today and I drove here, I might have listened to the radio, I might have seen some billboards, maybe as I was getting ready, the TV was on, I was checking my phone, I was doing all those things, but then let's say later on I just go and I search and I click on something that maybe I had seen earlier in the day. None of those impressions, none of that marketing would get the credit it deserves. What that looks like real time and digital, and I know this is a little bit of an eye chart, but look at the little blue circles with the mouse. Those are individual people. So we have 5 people that move throughout the day across a number of different sites. Our measurement structure would only be giving credit to the last site that that consumer was on. At Facebook, we believe you have to have multi-touch attribution, which is allowing credit to be given to all the different impressions that are created, by the way, not just digitally. It should include TV and radio and print and billboards and anything else that the consumer is on their journey. But our entire measurement industry has to evolve in order to capture that. So the 3 main trends that we see that are fundamentally changing how we need to think about marketing are the fact that practically every consumer, certainly in the US and eventually around the globe, is going to have a connected device that's going to be personal to them. Marketing is going to have to become much more personal, and measurement is going to have to follow so that we can help our clients figure out the most efficient way to spend to reach those consumers. So now let me talk about Facebook and our view on how we're thinking about those trends and hopefully helping our clients to deliver some fantastic results. The way we've approached Facebook from the beginning is it's about your unique identity. When Mark started the company 10 years ago, it was really important to him that people were their real selves online. Go back 20 years when you had your first handle. I was CNE Pluto at AOL. Think about even any other site that you're on now. It would have been unheard of 10 years ago to put your real identity online. People would have been frightened to put all their information in. But at Facebook, you are your real self. This is a picture of the Thumper and Barney conference room, which my team named a conference room at Facebook after 2 of my dogs that passed away in the last year, which was incredibly touching. But the point is, this is me. I'm Carolyn. I'm a mom on Facebook. I talk about my children. I talk about my friends and what I'm doing. I am my authentic self. And for the first time, marketers have over 1 billion people being their authentic self online. And that's a fundamentally different world than we lived in even a handful of years ago. This looks at the connections of all of those people around the world at any given millisecond on Facebook. And as I said, our mission to connect the world has not changed. While we've connected 1.2 billion people, and we have the amount of engagement that we have on a daily basis, over 800 million people are coming back. The majority, by the way, are now accessing Facebook on mobile. We still have work to do to connect the rest of the world. Now let me share a little bit of a story about mobile and Facebook, because clearly one of the most important themes that I want you to take away today is the importance of mobile in our marketing mix. But mobile hit Facebook faster than we expected. We were a desktop company when Mark created it. If Mark created Facebook 3 years ago, I'm not even sure we would even have a robust desktop site. Think of Instagram. It started as a mobile app. Think of Twitter, mobile. So we were a desktop company. And then one day, 2.5 years ago, as we watch our numbers, more people joined Facebook on mobile than they did on desktop. And during that summer, Mark realized he had to pivot the company quickly and dramatically. Within 90 days, all 3,000 engineers were retrained on how to code in mobile. He completely changed course and said we had to rebuild our apps. For those of you that used the Facebook app 5 years ago, I apologize. It was terrible. Hopefully it's better now. It had to be rebuilt from scratch. And I share that because we're based in Silicon Valley. We're supposed to know these things. We're supposed to see these trends coming, and it happened faster to us than we even anticipated. And so I share that in the spirit of, if you feel that you're behind or you're not addressing this, that's okay. Guess what? The majority of the industry is behind on addressing this. But you have an opportunity to catch up and to lead clients, to lead your customers, and to be where they are. What's happening on mobile now is that we have reinvested dramatically in our Facebook and Instagram apps. So if you take all of these competitors, and they're formidable and they're strong, we have an opportunity at Facebook now where we, between Facebook and Instagram, we're larger than the next 7 competitors combined. And that's an important position for us, but one that we really feel privileged to have, but we need to maintain humility around that, and we need to constantly innovate to make sure that we are delivering a fantastic experience and a delightful experience for the people that use Facebook. 1 out of every 5 minutes, somebody is on Facebook or Instagram in the US, and that's a pretty staggering statistic. And what that's allowing us to do, now that we have the personal connections and the unique identity, is to actually make business personal again. Our opportunity then is to show up and say, we have all of the people that matter to you. So what does that really mean? Well, when it starts to boil down, these are some of the numbers. So if a marketer needs to reach everyone in the US, it's 183 million at a month, but on a given day, it's about 120 million people. Okay, let's break it down further, because not every brand needs to reach 120 million people tomorrow. But maybe you need to reach homeowners, 83 million of them. Maybe you need to reach newlyweds, 171,000 of them at any given time. Maybe you need to reach diet drink consumers, like Wendy Clark, carbonated drink consumers. Maybe you're Ford, GM, or Chrysler, and you need to reach 4.2 million people that might be in the market to buy a truck in the next 30 days. It's taking that big number, the 1.2 billion, which sounds big and lovely, but actually getting it down to who are the people that matter to you, no matter what your business objective is. And because of the data that we have, people's interests in what they're doing on Facebook and our third-party matching, we're able to now cut and slice and get to very specific audiences to really reach all of the people that matter to you. And this is the environment that they're in for those of you that are not on Facebook. They're in the news feed, which for us is like a personalized digital newspaper where brands and stories from your friends and family come to life. At any given moment, each of you that is on Facebook right now could have about 1,500 stories that we could show you. Our algorithm selects about 150 of them, and we're constantly trying to figure out what are those best 150 stories. And within that, brands, small businesses, nonprofits, your friends, your family, all of those stories make up what we believe is a personalized digital newspaper that is different for every single person around the world every single millisecond. We're also now allowing brands to come to life through video. I'm going to share a quick description of what's happening with Dove.
When you're smiling, the whole world smiles with you.
So we just launched our premium video product. Now some of you might say, well, I've been seeing autoplay video in my news feed for the last 6 to 7 months. And the answer is you have, but you've seen those videos from your friends. We now have brands inserting video into Facebook to share their message in sight, sound, and motion. Now let me tell you a little bit of a story about Coca-Cola, and then I'm going to ask them to go back one slide in a moment and play the video. Coca-Cola had a moment during the Super Bowl, and they produced a beautiful film called America is Beautiful. And it was to acknowledge the amazing fabric of humanity that exists in our country, from all different walks of life, from all different ethnicities. I'd like to play the film if we could, and then I will take you through what we did with Coca-Cola.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, por tus olas de granos d'amber, yo piscinat sa kote, sa ibabaw ng mga prutas. America, America, God shed His grace on thee. Or bahijane ke saath taj tera cha, tu la mer bria. Berat tu verrière tirotard, from sea to shining sea.
When I think about last night, wasn't that fantastic? When you get an opportunity to work with a team that does creative like that, that really is going to make an impact, it's a true privilege. And when I was sitting there last night watching your awards, which I really enjoyed and was inspired by, I kept thinking about this campaign, because this was a brave and bold campaign to start a cultural conversation in America. And so Coca-Cola had that film, it was ready for the Super Bowl, and then we had an opportunity to help them bring it to life on Facebook. We took that film in partnership with their agency and our teams, and we cut it up into 18 different segments to introduce it in a personalized way to those segments. So here are 3: Middle Eastern American, US Hispanic, LGBT, but we created lots of different clusters. Remember the slide that I showed you before when I showed the newlyweds, carbonated soft drinkers? We can do the same cut by types of people that are on Facebook. So every day, for example, we have 23 million US Hispanics on Facebook. 9.8 million of them received this message. And so we took the film and picked the segment of the film that was most appropriate to introduce to that audience. And it created an amazing dialogue on Facebook. I'm going to take you through the plans and the learnings now, because I think this is really the big lesson to have. So Coca-Cola and their team had the plan to get ready and provoke the dialogue during the Super Bowl, and that was going to be a real peak in the campaign, transition, and get ready for Sochi. So that they had all the plans in place. But what they did here, which was spectacular, is when you do something bold and brave, and think about some of the work that you saw last night from Gap, when you do something like that, you have to be prepared to adjust and react in real time and not be afraid of the negativity. Because here were some of the initial reactions that happened on Facebook. It became quite negative when it first went out, but very quickly, for every negative comment, there were 16 positive comments. And so watching the sentiment and seeing the dialogue and embracing it and looking at it as an opportunity to engage in the conversation and change the momentum was the learning here. To do it quickly, to respond, and to be brave in the moment. Because I often get asked, well, what happens if people say negative things about my brand on Facebook, or they complain about our customer service? The reality is they're going to do that whether Facebook exists or not, or any other social network exists or not. But to be in the conversation and to be able to have that dialogue with the customers is really powerful. And so what happened after they tracked the sentiment, they adjusted plans, because then they started to put more energy into that conversation. So instead of having that dip, there was more of a continuation leading up to Sochi. And so the notion here is, yes, you can have plans in advance, months in advance. You can plan real time. There's a difference between planning real time and actually acting in real time. And we thought this was an amazing example of that. And this is probably the single best representation of how the sentiment turned. Because what summed up, by pitting smiley American children against ugly, angry adults, Coke has flattened the boycotters' arguments. A beautiful film doing incredibly important work to start a cultural conversation. The bravery behind it and sticking to it, reacting in real time, and then bringing it to life through Sochi. And this is what the team learned when they shared with us. First, you got to be prepared to change right up to the last minute. Not even just to the last minute, in the moment. Be prepared to ask for help. We actually only got involved with Coca-Cola 6 days before the Super Bowl, and we were able to pull that off together. 3, partner. It's all about great collaborative work between the agency, the client, and whichever media partner you're choosing to work with. Having those 3 represented at the table is critically important. They invested, and they got involved where the talk happened. I think it's an amazing example. When you think of personal marketing at scale, and you think of a brand like Coca-Cola, and as large an event as the Super Bowl of over 100 million people, how they took that, but then somehow had that message become personalized for all those various audiences in the US. We think it's the single best representation of what it means to do personalized marketing at scale that we've seen at Facebook to date. Let me move into measurement. 3 years ago, you probably had a brand page and you talked about fans. And while those social metrics were nice, as we like to say, business metrics are better. We drastically pivoted the company from being a social partner to actually an essential business partner. And how do you do that? You do that by being able to prove that we move product off the shelf or cars off the lots or the ability to sell more phones or any other vertical that you can think of. So the last 2 years, we invested heavily in our measurement partners. Datalogix now has over 50% of all shopper card data in the US. So I can tell any CPG what their activity on Facebook is driving, whether or not it's driving sales in grocery, drugstore, and big box. We can tell any auto company now, combining Datalogix and Polk data, whether or not we are actually moving cars off the lots or driving more people into the dealerships. We can tell AT&T, Verizon, whether or not our efforts on Facebook are helping them to get new customers or to retain them as contracts come up, or as people switch devices from feature phones to smartphones. It's a deep investment in measurement because we believe that you shouldn't spend a single dollar with us unless we know we're driving an actual business result for you. Here's an example of a really brave CMO named Duncan, who's the CMO of Canadian Tire. It's the largest retailer in Canada. They don't just sell tires. They sell sports equipment, clothing, all sorts of items. For 92 years, they relied on their paper circular. 92 years every week, 52 weeks a year. Duncan said to his board, I'm not sure any young millennial is looking at a paper circular. When I actually say paper circular at Facebook, most of the people look at me and they have no idea what I'm talking about because everyone in that's much younger have not even seen a paper circular. That's how fast it's changing. So Duncan said, what if we took the paper circular and made it digital? And so that paper circular looked like that for 2 weeks in people's news feed. They also partnered with Google. What they found during those 2 weeks, sales went up 12% overall at Canadian Tire, a 12% year-over-year increase in those 2 weeks. And on the items that were featured in the news feed on Facebook, those items went up 23% year-over-year. Home run, but it was brave. He had to convince a company to change something they had been doing for 92 years. Now he's convinced them, and there's a major shift happening for 2015. What does that take? That takes someone being brave, recognizing that the consumer has changed. The average 18 to 24-year-old is not getting their newspaper and looking at a paper circular, but they are on their mobile device. So be where they are. And he took a bold risk, and then we measured it aggressively to make sure whatever we were doing worked so that we could gain the confidence that we could scale it out before. Looking forward, there's going to be a lot of stuff coming out from Facebook, and there always is, and I'm sure you know about the announcements of us buying WhatsApp, which the deal hasn't closed, and Oculus, the lenses that allow you to do virtual reality. The thing we're most focused on right now is Instagram and helping Instagram get its legs in the advertising industry. We've run about 15 or so campaigns, great brands. Here you see Levi's and Ben & Jerry's and Michael Kors, and Macy's has done it, and Lexus. And the brand campaigns are really working. In the environment of Instagram, people are documenting the world through imagery, and they're curating it. It's a very different use case than Facebook. On Facebook, you connect to people that you know. On Instagram, you mostly connect to content that you're interested in. You think about that one picture you're going to post on Instagram, whereas Facebook, you might put a photo album. The younger demos are really excited about Instagram and love the brand. And so we're early days, but we're helping brands come to life on Instagram. And what we're seeing initially is that when you look at all the brand metrics, awareness, recall, intent to purchase, we have anywhere from 20 to 35-point increases. And so we think Instagram is going to be a really valuable brand building property as we go forward, but it's really early days. So at the end of the day, what we're trying to do across all our properties is this, is make business personal again. Because as we know, people are the backbone of our industry. People are the consumers that are buying all of our products, that are engaging with our services. And so what better way and what better opportunity do we have for the very first time in our industry to take what was super great about the local shopkeeper, what has been amazing about mass media, and put the two together and actually drive extraordinary business results. So that's what we're up to at Facebook, and with that, I'll take some questions, and thank you. Any questions?
What's a paper circular?
You can come to work at Facebook. I feel very old when I describe paper circulars at Facebook.
It's a serious question. What's a paper circular? I didn't know. And they took that and made it into, sorry, my voice is gone being here. They took that and made it into a digital form. How did they do that?
Yes, so think of, if I assume the question is sincere then, based on you asking it, yes.
At first, no, but yes.
Okay, so what they essentially did is, within a circular, usually retailers have hundreds of products that they like to advertise, and most do it on Sundays in newspapers, and some do it direct mail. And what they did is they picked a handful of products in that initial test and featured them in the news feed. And then what we did is we targeted their consumers. So they said, what's really important is to reach, it was 18 to 24-year-olds it was skating equipment and hockey equipment, and we created custom clusters and sent that out. But what we're doing now is helping them to build all of their product portfolio that you would be able to put in a paper circular and actually bring that to life through newsfeed.
I see. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? There's one back there.
The contrarians like to talk about Facebook fatigue, and people do get bored with software over time and move on to the new things. So I'm wondering, with all of this, how do you keep it fresh, aside from acquisitions, and avoid what, first I'd ask, do you believe that is true? And second, how do you avoid that?
I think there's a couple of answers to the question, and I appreciate the question. First and foremost, you're going to see us, and hopefully, how many of you, I'm going to ask this question, how many of you are on Facebook? Okay, thank you. We appreciate that very much. How many of you got a look-back video, the look-back video for our 10-year? Okay, so one of the first things that we're trying to do is to delight people that use Facebook more often. And the look-back video is probably the first best example of us doing that, which is to frankly thank people that are using it, surprise and delight. And when people came onto Facebook within those 24 hours and saw that you could look back on your years on Facebook, our brand sentiment shot up better than it has in 10 years. So it told us that we need to do a much better job at delighting people. So now if it's your anniversary, your wedding anniversary, it's your birthday, you're going to see more and more things coming out from us that hopefully make you realize that it is kind of powerful to be connected with your friends and have the kind of history you have on Facebook. So I think you're going to see more of that and more of an investment in our own brand, because we were not, in my view, we were not marketing our own brand. We were letting the product do it, and I think we have more work to do there. So that's part one. Part two is there are all these articles sometimes about Facebook fatigue and are teens on Facebook, are they not on Facebook? All we can do is disclose our data, and our data suggests that people are still joining Facebook. About over 1 million a day are joining Facebook. By the time we go to bed tonight, well over 100,000 in Brazil and 80,000 in India. And so people are still joining in large numbers. That's one measurement. But the real important one is our engagement metric, which is, are people coming back? We measure 6 out of the last 7 days. It used to be about 50% of people would come back, and now over 60% of people are coming back. So that tells us that, yes, people are wanting to come back and engage. I think sometimes it's sort of like the in thing to say, oh, we've got Facebook fatigue, or I really do. I think there's some of that. But when you really look at the numbers, which is the only data that we can really look at, we are growing our audience, they're more engaged, and we're adding new people every single day. So that's how I would answer that. And I do think that you'll see us with Instagram. I mean, Instagram is now at 200 million people. It's the fastest growing app, growing faster than Facebook did. There's something clearly about visual imagery that people like. Messenger, by the way, the reason why we are purchasing WhatsApp is we saw messaging becoming a utility that consumers wanted to do around the world. And while we have our own Messenger app, they didn't love having to go through the Facebook app to get to the Messenger, which is why we've now pulled out, have our standalone Messenger app, and we have WhatsApp, which just hit 500 million. And we think basically there'll be maybe a handful of services that will get to about 1 billion people. And WhatsApp, we think, is going to be one of them. So you're going to see us continue to try to make sure that we're addressing consumer needs. It's not all about Facebook Blue app all the time. Like, it would be arrogant and wrong for us to think that way. We have to cater to consumer needs, which is why we're doing some of the other things we're doing. There's a question.
Excuse me.
Oh, yes?
Yeah.
Hi.
First of all, thank you for sharing your time with us this morning. There are some absolutely brilliant and amazing marketers and such in this room, as you're well aware. How would you advise the many of us that are working with brands, working with clients that are accustomed to seeing their messaging, the creative, et cetera, adjacent to their competitors, rather than in the news feed where now it's adjacent to competition, that is pictures of my wife, pictures of my kids, et cetera?
So a little known fact, but out of the 1 billion plus people on Facebook, there is a segment of the population on Facebook that has never seen an ad and will never see an ad, because we literally need a control group to understand whether ads are a good thing or a bad thing on Facebook. And so we have a control group, and we watch sentiment very carefully. Here's what we hear from the people that use Facebook. They actually don't mind the ads at all. Otherwise, we'd be big trouble for our business. They don't mind the ads. What they get really mad about is they say, if you know so much about me, why can't you show me a more relevant ad? So they get frustrated if we're sending an ad to them that they think is totally irrelevant. And the more granular and targeted we can get, the better they actually like the ad experience, unless it's bold, beautiful content that is literally in popular culture that everyone's talking about, a la Super Bowl spots. And so it's really about the relevance. What I would say to you as a marketer in that space, we think it's a privilege to be in that space, right? If you think about even your own use case, don't think of yourself as a marketer. Think of yourself as a person on Facebook. Let's say you post something. Not everyone gets to see your story because, again, we have to curate and figure out those 150 stories that are relevant for you. So as an individual, you often think about, well, what's relevant, what's gonna resonate. And it's the same thing with the marketers, but it's a privilege, we think, to be in that space where people are entirely engaged. There's no fast forwarding through commercials here. They're in an environment where they're in a discovery mode, and I think it's a really fantastic piece of real estate. So that's at least how we think about it. There's a question over here. I'm not sure where the mic is, but oh, we're done. I'm getting kicked off. All right, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks.